phone and we can do it from here. That's good. So are we ready to roll?
Yep.
Oh, since I'm okay, so we'll begin the meeting. Since there's not currently a chairperson, I'd like to ask the members who should be chairman or chairperson this year. Ray, or you're the most senior. Do you have an interest in being the chairperson?
No, I would nominate Debbie.
There's no one else, right?
Then there we go. So our new chairperson, then, it sounds like by acclamation, is Debbie. So Debbie, that
Thank
being
you.
the case, the meeting is yours.
Okay, well, I'll do my best. So correct me along the way if I've made a mistake, okay?
Oh,
We'll call the morning.
to do that.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and roll call, please.
It appears that Roberts and Johnson are both present.
Very good.
We'll so note in the minutes.
Okay. Next item, public comment. Jessica, anybody present from the community?
No, we do not. There's no public comment.
Okay. So you were a little muffled there. You said no, correct?
Correct. No public comment for this evening.
Okay.
All righty. And Jim, do you want to?
You have
address
3 minutes from the prior meeting. Mr. Johnson, do the minutes reflect what you recall from the meeting last December?
Yes,
So you recommend that they be approved?
I do.
So we'll just note in the minutes, that these were accepted based on recommendation of Mr. Johnson, who was present at the meeting. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
If so, we'll still note in the minutes then. And then we can move on to item D.
Item D is me. I'll just take over.
Okay, thank you.
I got D, E, and F, and G. Okay, item D. Sandia Creek and Via Vaqueros. The environmental project is what we're in the middle of doing. And we did, the district through Jessica there, set up our online account number. So that's going to get everything rolling with all the agencies now. So thank you, Jessica, for getting all that straightened out. We appreciate it. And so that's really all I have on that project. If there's any questions, be glad to answer them, but that's not a big update.
Okay,
So if not, I'll move on.
okay.
Buena Vista reconstruction project, that's the street that got washed out. And the first FEMA submittal thing that got rejected. We had a meeting last month with the environmental people of Riverside County. They went through some of any concerns they had, and then they prepared an update for that. They have a meeting tomorrow where all the agencies, the Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, the state and the county get together, and they have a Zoom meeting to go over all the different items on there. Someone at that meeting may come up and say, hey, they may come back and say, hey, this is great, submit it, and you'll just go right on through the system. Or they'll say, you know, what about this bird or this lizard? Did you even consider that? Or something like that, that they might have to go out and do a little extra research on and then submit. So I'll know more at the next meeting on that. But the tomorrow it's kind of a big kickoff meeting for that, because they've done all their work up to date. And so they're ready to do some submittals. But this is a meeting that gives them the blessing to go forward with that for the agencies. And it's really good that all the agencies are involved in this project early. there's been a lot of changes that have been going on the last 3 or 4 months with these agencies and how to do the submittals. They're all up to speed on how to do it, so we're working with them on that. So Buena Vista. Anything else? Okay, so that's really the only update I have on that.
Okay.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Dave, where are we on our timeline for getting this completed? Buena Vista, as far as the environmental work?
If everything goes smoothly, they're 3 months down the line, they'll be done. If there's a hiccup,
Early spring,
yeah,
mid-spring?
yeah,
Okay,
that's what they're saying. If everything goes smoothly, which they have high hopes it will. But when you get with all these agencies, we experienced with some of the people with the Corps of Engineers and their people there, sometimes they can sit on these things forever. So we're optimistically positive on this, the way we are right now, because of all the involvement we're getting into. So they're saying the latest would be like May or June. So at the latest.
okay. But okay, that's consistent with timeline for later on discussion here.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Slurry seal project. Last month they actually had finished up all the roadways for the slurry seal, and they did a majority of the striping. I think the holidays slowed them down on striping. And I know, Steve, they started striping again for some of the outline areas.
Yeah, looks like they got quite a bit of the punch list done yesterday. And so we'll go by and check and see, but I only noticed a few things that were left to do. So they're within 1% or 2% probably, you know.
Okay, so that's gone well. I do have a big invoice in for them for $420,000 that will show up at the board meeting for approval to pay next week. So getting that turned into Teresa to process that. So that's the first payment, and then the rest of it will be what remained in the striping and stuff like that. So that it went well. Any more questions on the slurry seal project?
No.
Okay. Okay. Third project is the future project roadways. It's this time of year to think about what we want to do for 2021/2022 as far as the next project goes, and what do we want to do. When we first started, okay, when did I start? Right when the big rain, 2018, when we had the big floods and stuff, that kind of threw everything out of whack. And so we spent the first year spending the money to fix all the different storm drains that went out and fixed all those. That was, in the budget. That's what we spent our budget money on. Coming up, and then last year, this year, we just talked about the slurry seal project. We spent roughly $675,000 on slurry seal and a big chunk of the roadways in the district. And then Steve went and got striping, where we striped almost the entire district in there. So that's what we did last year. So I emailed everybody kind of a piece of paper with some spreadsheets on it. So if you have it, looks like that. And what I kind of label out, there's basically 3 choices that we can, actually there's 4. There's a do nothing choice always. You can always say you don't want to do anything, you just save the money for future. But I listed 3 items in here, and this is kind of the big picture for everyone for you guys to start thinking about, is how we kind of maybe want to spend our money in the next year or maybe the next 2 years. But so the first item is we had some unfinished work that was laid out in 2016 and 17, and that was on Via Fiqueros. And Via Fiqueros, they did phases 1 through 3 already, and that's the southern end working their way up. the previous engineer designed 4A, and that's Via Figueros from Via de los Robles to 1,650 feet north of Cale Roca. And that project's about a $465,000 job for the paving and design and the CM. There's a little bit of money in there for design just because it's been sitting on the shelf for so long. We want to see if anything needs to be upgraded in the specs, and all the specs have to be redone because we had old specs back and then, and the current attorney for the district hated the old specs, and he gave us a whole new set of specs to follow in the general stuff. So there's some money in there for that. And then the construction management and some general administration. And then there's phase 4B, 5, and 6. And so kind of, you can see it goes, they wanted to continue on that train. There's a lot of money in that. Adds up to almost like $2 million, you know, to finish that. It would take it all the way up to Sandia Creek, not Sandia Creek. Yeah, Sandia Creek. The second project I have here, we wanted to spend our money, and that would be for the Buena Vista Road culvert that washed out. The estimate on that, including design, construction administration, admin, and the construction costs would be about $530,000 total. That's a ballpark number at this time, and that would all be in Zone 1, whereas the Via Vaqueros is all in your primary road zones. I'll kind of get to the zones in just a minute and how important that is. So there's 2 projects. And the third project is to kind of do like we did last. What was that? Or is that just feedback from me? The third project is where we spread the money out and we do a little project in each zone. If you see in number 3, we talk about spreading the money out. And you can see the percentages I put for primary road at 49%, zone 1 at 17, zone 2, 6, and on. The district has a policy to spend money for these percentages. And that's how they get the money collected, I think, from the residents that are in those zones, and that's how the money is distributed. And that would spread all that out. And we could come up with projects like we did. And if that's something you'd like, I would go through and review what we did for the pavement management study and come up with projects on roads to fix and spread the money around equally per these percentages and do that kind of a project. So the way the district has been set up, we've been spending approximately $675 to $725 a year on road projects. And so that's kind of a general ballpark feel for that. So we've been working on Buena Vista Environmental, the demand for some of the residents on there to get that project environmentally, I'll say, closed, so that if we want to go out for construction, we can do it. Because it takes a year to year and a half sometimes to get all these things ready to go. And as we mentioned, we should have it the latest ready to go for that by the latest by June, that we May, June, that we could go for that. But again, that would then spend, I believe, all the money that's sitting aside in Zone 1 right now. I don't have that exact number in front of me, but it's close to that number. And some of the concerns you may have is if something major would happen after we spent all their money, we have to go in there and repair some roadways in there. They don't have any money to send. They'd actually have to either borrow money for the district or leave it the way it is. You know, so there's some issues out there that we would have to come back and say, hey, Zone 1 has no money at this time. And that's something that Jim would take back to the board and say either declare an emergency or do something. If FEMA didn't take care of it and it's all on the district, you know, it becomes kind of a financial deal. So that's kind of a big picture. I also gave you a copy of a map, and you can kind of see the map I gave you before. And you've all seen it. It shows what we did in 2020, and I also showed what we did in 2018 plus 3A, and that's on fixing some of the roads. And then the remainder of the roads, you know, I showed what striping we did. The striping's in blue. But really it's the black and green where we actually did work on the actual streets on as far as the surface goes. So you can get an idea where we're at. And then you can see what zone is in each one too, because the zones are color coordinated. So it's kind of a big picture. I think what Jim and I kind of want to know is how the committee feels about, well, what should we present to the board on recommendations for spending this coming year? Should we put all our money in primary roads? Should we put it all in zone one, or we should spread it around to all the zones? And if you don't do item one, which is Via Ficaros, that's not a major deal. If on item two, where it's the Buena Vista is all zone one, I know Jim's gone to several homeowner meetings out there, and they're very anxious to get that road back open again. And Jim, aren't there like 25 homes that it affects out there?
Well, yeah, you're talking about Buena Vista?
Yeah.
Right.
No, there's not a large number of residents affected by Buena Vista. The traffic studies and all show that pretty minimal, but they are anxious to have that reopen. And then there's some issues about, you know, currently they have a secondary access. There's some fire, I guess, you know, fire access issues. It's really not the same. I think what you're confusing is the homeowners meeting that the people are extremely anxious are getting Sandia Creek opened up. And that's related to environmental.
Yeah, I got
this Buena Vista, there have been a few. They have come to the board meetings in the past. I think there's like 3 that have appeared at board meetings. We do hear from them. But it's not a huge volume because this area is pretty isolated where it is. But it is a huge hole in the road. There's safety issues and things like that. So that's why we went ahead and pursued the environmental, because, you know, as you just said earlier, it takes a year before you can really even begin to think about construction to get the environmental process completed. And now it sounds like we're within some months of that. So, but you can't do any construction until the environmental is finished. And this year we would be prepared, I believe, to look at possible reconstruction of that road. And that this would be the first time, because without the environmental work, we could have talked about reconstruction of this, but we had no ability to do so. Also, I guess the final thing, FEMA. This is why it was so critical that we get FEMA money for this. And we now know that has failed, that FEMA is not going to fund this, because it's this is a secondary road. So it's paid purely by, repairs are paid purely by the residents in the zone. And the money builds up for repairs such as this each year. And each zone has, you know, some surplus money. In this case, zone 1 has about 600,000 in funds. But if we put it all here, it's going to take years for that to build back up. And I don't know what the possibilities are that they're going to have another major problem like this. But even the smaller projects, we're not going to be able to do unless we do some borrowing or something for that zone. So that's the downside is it'll take all the money for the zone, and with the FEMA would have cured that. That would impact it because of FEMA money, but that's gone now. So we have to forget, that this is somehow going to be paid for by FEMA. It's not. So it's all ours now. It's going to have to be dealt with sooner or later.
So with that, any thoughts from the committee members? Steve?
So is there somewhere maybe in the middle, instead of wiping out Zone 1's entire budget, maybe you just put 200,000 or something of this 675,000 towards their money, so they still have some left in their pot in case there is another street that comes up, and then we still can take the rest of the 500,000 that's left over and do other projects. Because one of the ones I would like to throw out would be is we didn't do the detour route, and that road got beat up pretty good, Buenos Campos especially. But we did not pave or resurface or do anything with the detour route. So the Sandia Creek south of Buenos Campos, the Buenos Campos, Tierrica, and all of De Anza did not get restriped, did not get resurfaced, did not get anything. And so we might want to throw some of it down there as part of that Sandia Creek washout when it opens up,
Right, and we were thinking about doing that after Sandia Creek and everything is done, completely done. And so that may be on the following year's budget.
Okay, so that's more like a next year's budget then.
That's next year's budget.
Okay.
But when it comes to Buena Vista Culvert, you either do it all or you don't do anything.
Right.
No, I'm saying you do it all, but I'm saying, can you split the funding, say Zone 1 is required to pay 70% or something like that, and this money will go towards 25% to help them out, so that they're not, in a.
Oh, you're talking about making the residents pay an extra tax. Is that what you're saying?
You have, if I'm understanding, you have about $700,000 in the budget that you could put on primary streets, or you could spread about the zones.
No.
No.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's a good point.
So if you say Zone 1 has 17% or something like that, is what they get. 17% of $700,000 is, $150,000. So if you give them $150,000, their 17% allocation for Zone 1, and they already have 600,000 in there, then they've got, $770,000, and they only have a $530,000 project. So they're going to have 250,000 left over. They're not going to get wiped out.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that the current budget that Jim is saying has all the cost going into it yet.
Okay.
Because you got to remember, they're paying for 17% of all this slurry seal that we did, and the striping and all that kind of stuff. So those costs haven't hit it yet.
Okay.
So what the numbers that Jim's talking about is a clean number without this year's project hitting the books yet.
Okay.
So I wouldn't count it as you have an extra 17%. You don't, that's not the way it works. It's whatever the bank is. By the time we start this project, that bank will be a little bit less than what Jim says. And then they don't get money when November, and I guess you get some in April when the taxes are due.
So the decision really comes down to, if you were talking about Buena Vista, would be that I don't want to wipe out my entire savings account kind of thing for this one project. So I hold off, or B, I wipe it out and I just take my chances on if I don't have any more road failures as I'm building it back up, or C, you loan them some money and they could pay it back if they don't use it, kind of thing.
Yeah, loaning money, I have no idea about that. Jim may be able to tell you about that one, but either you save enough money through the coming years to have enough money to do Buena Vista and have some money left over, or you do it now and go down to zero. I'm not sure, Jim, can he borrow money from other districts to pay for this thing?
It's really an internal accounting thing. And probably the best way to approach it is if we're gonna do Buena Vista, we go ahead and just keep the Zone 1 funds as they are. And the next audit, it may show 10% negative or maybe only 1% positive, and let that be what it is.
Mhm.
And worry about borrowing on the next round. So if there's some
Yeah.
need the next couple of years, then we have to figure out how to do that. And it's more accounting anything. But what it really does is it precludes the people in Zone 1, if they have a project they want to do a year after we finish this one, the answer is no.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah, but isn't this a priority? I mean, if we don't do anything, the possibility exists that it can become worse.
You would lose more and more dirt each rainy season, and the hole would get bigger,
Right.
which would then cost you some more money.
Mhm.
Dirt is probably the cheapest of the stuff that we have going on out there, but there's a lot of dirt gone. So it adds up
Okay.
to a pretty good amount.
Now, how long has it been overall that we've had this particular problem for those folks? How many years now?
2017.
Wow. Yeah.
So-
Ray, do you have any comments? I mean, you've been in the group and heard the dialogue and so forth. I have my initial reaction, and that is, I think that's a priority.
Yeah. I tend to agree.
Yeah, it just seems, I mean, that's a lot of time, a great deal of damage, the potential with more, yeah, dirt is less. But depending upon what kind of seasons we're going to have here at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I agree with Jim. I think if we're going to do it, we do it. If they have $10,000 left over, or if they don't, if something comes up in the future, then we'll have to deal with that.
Okay.
So it sounds that the committee is leaning toward making Buena Vista our project this year.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay.
Ray, any other thoughts?
So I'm misunderstanding something, Jim. You have a funding source in Zone 1, which is their reserve account that has $600,000, and you may have around a $600,000 project. Or maybe it's a few bucks more, whatever, but it's in that range. So you're voting to wipe out that reserve account and put them back down to zero and go ahead and do their project. But don't we still have the other $600,000 or $700,000 in the budget for all the other zones? Is there not another project allowed here?
No, you have $675,000 to $700,000 total every year to spend.
Yeah, I
Right,
think that
and
cash flow way down. Because you have to remember that 600,000 is a big chunk of that 6 million that we have in the bank. It's 10% right there. So to go down another 600,000, I don't know. We would have to.
okay.
I guess you're right. In theory, we could approach it that way. But this is a pretty big project for 1 year. I think it would be kind of reckless to get a couple of them going at one time for that kind of swing in cash on hand. That's
Okay.
why we wouldn't go there.
Okay.
So if we're going to do a $750,000 project, we should just do one. And even though technically you're right, and this one project is all coming out of one place, so therefore we have all this extra accounting wise, it would still be 1.5 million bucks. And I don't know that they want to go there, release that kind of money in 1 year.
Yeah, they haven't done it in the past.
Yes.
Okay.
So we could do an analysis of it. But I'm just thinking just staff wise, I don't think we're staffed to do two projects like that at one time.
Okay.
But again, it's up to the committee how how aggressive you want to be. I guess we could do that. Because one alternative is not spend any money this year,
Right.
which they did a couple years ago, you know, because it's only a matter of time that we're going to get another major rainstorm that's going to do the same amount of damage that happened a few years ago, but FEMA is not going to pay because it won't be a declared disaster area. So it really gets it more into finance than engineering here. Maybe I'll bring it up at the finance committee. How do you guys feel about doing two projects in 1 year for 1.5 or 1.4 million? Because most of it's coming out of zone one. I think I can answer, but I can ask the question.
Well, Dave, what's your gut telling you? I mean, what are you leaning towards? And
Well, you have a roadway set up that was in place when you started the district. And I think the residents assume that those roadways will stay open and this one's closed. So I think they kind of expect that to be fixed and whenever there's money available. I think they all understand that there's a money issue and we're fixing all these other things and we'll get to it. But it was part of the roadway system and for us to change that, I think that would upset a lot of people. So I'm all for doing it, but it's really, I will spend the money however you want to is my job. Yeah. And as
well,
we
Jim.
go-
Okay, go ahead,
I have-
Steve.
Well, I have another option that I was going to run by you, Dave. What about doing permanent pothole patching and some crack sealing and some things like that with in-house staff? We've been kind of looking at that and saying, this is a real inexpensive way to help not restore, but strengthen the roads and keep them, you know, from, if we're not going to do any projects like slurry sealing or paving, maybe we do some crack sealing and some patching and stuff like that in some key places, so good roads don't get worse, you know. And then we didn't lose a year, you know, kind of a thing. Because would that be helpful? Because that's not very much at all.
Again, like, do you have a budget every year for your roadway repairs? You know, how much budget do you get for that? And if you're asking
Yeah,
for,
that'd be more of a budget item next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking in terms of to help the board and the committee here make a decision. If we say, okay, we're going to bank this 675,000 this year, because we don't want to run the risk of the, as Jim is saying, run the risk of the reserves going too low in case we get hit with another washout or something like that. So we bank the money, but now we go out and we spend this year, say, we're not going to just do nothing other than Buena Vista. We'll go out and do some crack sealing, or we'll go out and do some pothole patching, permanent patching, some other stuff like that. That will be helpful to keep the roads in good condition since we're not doing any work on them. And that'll extend their life a few more years and stuff until we do spend the money.
yeah,
That
but
would
the big question really is, and it's probably from the board, is, okay, how much do you want to spend this year for road projects?
Right.
And we have several alternatives. One, if we go with Buena Vista, let's just say they're going to say, okay, you have 675,000 to spend. They come up with a number, whatever that number is. We're going to spend 530 on Buena Vista. That remainder can go for the other miscellaneous projects that we have if they give us a budget. See, I can't come up and say, hey, here's the budget. Typically, a group like this will come up and say, we're going to spend on average $700,000 a year to try and maintain the roadways. When I was in charge of cities, either with paper will tell you that how much you need to just to maintain your roads, how many dollars. And if you exceed that, then you're improving your overall roadway higher. And if you go less than that, your roads are going down. You know, they're getting degraded,
Falling behind, yeah.
falling behind. And probably that number in Duluth, I don't have it top of my head, is in that 600 to 700,000 range.
Can't see.
Why they've been spending that kind of money. So really,
Thank you.
what we need to do is talk to the finance committee and say, we got several projects we're talking about, you know, but we just want to make sure
Thank
how
you.
much are you comfortable spending next year? And then we can fit these projects into that, how much you have, how much they have. And like I say, you know, it's there's $12 million of improvements in roadways out there. I don't have $12 million. So you got to spread that over time. And over time, existing roadways, it's a constant thing. You will be constantly spending this money. You will never catch up and get everything fixed, and it will stay that way forever. Just won't happen.
Mhm.
I'm just suggesting that we get a feel from the finance committee
Mhm.
what they want to spend and are comfortable with. And then we can come back to us and we can say, okay, now we have this dollar figure. We can do some small projects and one big project, or just do the big project, or not do the big project and do all just a bunch of little small
Mhm.
projects. Whatever that dollar figure comes out will determine how we're going to go forward. I'm kind of assuming that we're going to get 600,000 or 700,000, but that could be totally wrong because we
Okay.
haven't talked to them yet. So I would suggest with Jim to bring it up at the meeting next week with the finance?
Yeah, next week. And remember, this decision doesn't have to be made tonight.
Right.
This is kind of the preliminary meeting where we lay all the different options out, and then actually we're accomplishing the goal of this meeting. Let's kind of figure out what it is we don't know, and questions that people have and thoughts or whatever, and then take it back and have some answers at your next meeting in February. So like, I'm thinking Debbie's report at the board meeting would be just kind of some of the things that we're looking into without any decision or thought, you know, that's any direction yet. And that we'll be coming back at the February meeting, and the committee will be making some decisions which will be recommended to the board at the February meeting. So this is kind of an exploration meeting, and it's really going well, I think, because we're exploring a lot of different things, and there's some things that have come up that we need to look into, one of which is financing, which I will do in next week with the finance committee. And then we'll have some, and I need to have Teresa perhaps do some analyses for us, and we'll have that for you at your February meeting. So
Okay.
I hope that helped.
Yeah, so this is just a big picture discussion. And Steve, thanks for, you know, little projects can all be fit in with a project, you know, so we might be able to do all kinds of different things. We'll find that out. We'll work through.
Yeah, I think that's a good conservative approach.
Yeah, and we don't really probably, when do we have to have a decision on this, Jim? March, April?
For a meeting, recommendations will be going to the board with actions starting to take place at the board level in March and April.
Yeah.
Things like going or that kind of thing, making a decision to do the project, that kind of thing, probably March. And then call for bids in April, out to bid in May, award in June, July, something like that. Work to take place in August, September.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of the calendar.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not a complicated job because it's all in one place. Like the point, it's a lot of dirt being hauled in to fill it in. The pipes are, you know, pipes. They'll be easy to put in, but clearing and grubbing and putting the pipes in is pretty simple, and then backfill that whole thing up. And just be a lot of truckloads of dirt and stuff and rock and stuff like that. So
Okay.
it's not going to take a year to build, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's going to be like 3 months, maybe the max, or probably 2 to 3. The guys want to get in and get out. That's how they make their money. Okay, well, I think we did quite a bit on Jeep. That was good.
Thank you. Okay. Mr.
I guess
C,
we're,
is he next? Any
Yeah.
comment, Jim?
no, so you're satisfied now, Dave? You got all the information you need on all those items, correct?
I do.
Okay, we kind of skied through a bunch of them there, so, okay, just want to make sure. Thanks.
Yep.
Miss Jessica, can you put up our PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as Dave mentioned, we're really close wrapping this thing up. The last part of it is just finishing up the punch list on the striping. And like I said, they were out yesterday doing quite a bit of it. I only saw 1 or 2 streets that have not been done on the punch list. So I mean, we may have by your board meeting a completed project. You know, it's that close. Next one. As you know, we're rotating the CMS around to keep everybody on their toes about their speeds and stuff like that. So just giving you the schedule here that we're going to be putting it on Avenida Doro, Sierra Mesa, Vista Del Mar, and Calle Capistrano. So you'll be seeing that over the next 3 to 6 weeks, rotated out to those 4 streets. We came up with a new idea, you know, several months back, and we talked to you about it, about putting tape on the guardrails and that. So we have followed through with that, and all the guardrails in the community have now been installed and have the permanent reflective tape on the guardrails. So at nighttime, you should see those when your headlights go by. We installed the no right turn restriction so that when the work gets done eventually on opening up Sandia Creek, it'll be in place. This is something you guys approved about 4 to 6 months ago. And we've had the signs sitting around in the yard. So we decided to go ahead and just put them up and they're ready to go when the road gets reopened. This is an update with the county. We spoke to them and they gave us a few updates here. The first one here is regarding the speed limit on Rancho California Road. The county traffic engineer has approved 45-mile-an-hour limit, reducing it down from 55 miles to 45 miles an hour. It's going to take about 60 days for them to get it through the Board of Supervisors with 2 readings and everything else like that, and then get a crew up here to post it and all that kind of stuff like that. But in the interim, what he did was he took the 55-mile-an-hour signs down. So between Avenida del Oro and the Temecula city limits, there's no posted signs right now, except for the 35-mile-an-hour hairpin curve and the 40-mile-an-hour hairpin curve and stuff like that. So, but it'll ultimately, it's being proposed that it would be a maximum 45. And that ties in nicely the fact that Temecula has a 45-mile-an-hour limit also in their city between Diaz and the city limits. So the 2 will be the same all the way through there, and people could just hold a steady speed. This is the overlook area there. I took a little picture here to kind of describe what's going to happen there. If you can kind of look about the middle of the picture, you see the little red tags or flags or whatever you want to call those. Those markers show where the guardrail is going to be installed. The county is going to install a guardrail to prohibit cars from driving out onto that property. And they'll be posting it with no stopping signs so that they can enforce it for people that if they try to stop there. And that the resident, if you look where the K rail is, That's where the actual right of way is. That's where his property starts and the county's right of way ends. So he's going to be building a fence with gates and stuff back at that point in the process of developing. There's like 2 or 3 homes that he wants to develop over there on that property. So he'll be building that. So you'll see 2 projects coming in the future here. The first will be the guardrail, and then the second will eventually be the resident catching up with building a fence and gates.
Cool.
And that's my report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No, all great news.
Okay, we'll go on to the maintenance section then. So we're continuing to grade shoulders. And of course, this is, you see the effect of when we grade it with the blades, it removes the weeds. It helps reduce the fire hazard. This is longer lasting than just mowing them. You know, we looked at mowing and we said, well, all we're doing is knocking the height of the weeds down, but we're not really taking the weeds out. So after a few rains and a little bit of sunshine, they grow right back. And we're just kind of spending our time chasing that. So we're trying to make a more efficient use of our staff time. And so we said, let's spend the time and let's just blade it and get the weeds and everything out of there completely. So instead of coming out here and having to mow it, you know, once or twice or maybe even 3 times in a blooming type year, we can blade it once here, and that should handle it for a good year or more. So the next ones that are the ones that we just finished since the last meeting are these 12 streets we went out and bladed. So if you're in the area and you see those 12, you'll see that the work has been done along the edges of all those 12. Other ongoing activities, we're starting to get more reportings of illegal dumpings and stuff like that. So we're looking at our options for how we're going to handle these. It's in our public right of way, but you know, some of these dumpings are people leaving them in our right of way on someone else's property. Some of these dumpings we're finding are actually trimmings and stuff that owners have carried out to the street. So we're kind of sorting through those and sending letters as appropriate for some, and we'll have to maybe haul some of these away on our own on the others. This is a concrete repair that we did just to show that the staff has got multiple talents. So this was the cross gutter, or not cross gutter, this was the gutter along Via Cielo. And what was happening here was that you see a couple of pieces of concrete up there. That's all that was in there, a few broken chips of concrete, and the water was seeping in and can go under the road, of course, and start undermining the road and stuff like that. So next slide. Our crew came in there, dug that broken concrete out, and then they patched it with concrete solid in there. And then because that whole entire gutter had dropped about 4 inches from the pavement, they put that asphalt edge in there so that we don't have a large lip there for any sort of recovery of our vehicle. So we're working with Rancho Cal to fix 4 locations currently that are leaking. We have 4 streets all over the community that we have leaks, and so we're working closely with them, trying to get them to do the permanent repairs to stop the flow. This is a new idea that we would like to propose and get your support for and stuff. Is this is what I was saying a little bit earlier to Dave. This is a crack sealing machine. It's a little walk behind machine that you just can seal up some cracks that are, you know, our slurry seal project takes care of the cracks that are kind of small and fills them right in and stuff like that. But occasionally streets will get some streets that get some cracks that are a little bit larger. And so to pay a contractor to come out and do that, we paid as a change order for a little section, about 100 feet section, 150 feet section that had 4 or 5 major cracks in it. We paid him $950 to have that work done. For $950, we can buy that machine, and then we can do it in-house forevermore. So we're thinking that this is a way to help extend the life of the pavement and stuff like that for some of the larger cracks that we're seeing on some of these streets that are in pretty good condition, but just have a good sized crack in there that we don't want the water to get down in there and stuff like that. So we'll work closely with you, Dave, to identify what streets that you guys might see too that this would be beneficial on, because our staff would be more than happy to fill in and do some of that work.
Okay.
And then this is another new idea that the staff is coming up with, is that currently we temporarily do potholes with cold mix. So we have a 12-inch pothole out there. We dump a bag of cold mix in there and tamp it all down and stuff like that. And 30, 60, 90 days later, that pothole may reappear after traffic's gone out, because the intent of the temporary is only till you can come back in and do something more permanent. We figured out a way that we can do is we can heat up this temporary. We can get a little saw and square it up and heat it up and tamp it down. And so with a purchase of a little saw and a tamper, it's low cost. We can actually permanently repair these things, cut it down and put a nice 3-inch or 4-inch section of asphalt in there that'll stay in there solid. So if that street is being one of those ones that doesn't get repaved for 3 years or 5 years, that pothole will be in good shape for that time, versus now we might have to go out that pothole half a dozen or more times. And so we're trying to make better use of our staff time than to keep revisiting the same stuff. So that's our thought. And I think that concludes. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
No, none for me.
Okay, so I guess the next item is mine. Permits. Steve, do we have any permits we need to talk about tonight? I don't believe we do.
There's nothing really pressing for tonight, no.
Okay, and there's no subdivision maps issues I'm aware of. In terms of county issues, Steve covered that somewhat with Riverside County. I'd just like to report that I have been contacted by the planners at San Diego County regarding the I believe it's 2.2 mile private road known as Sandia Creek on the south side, where the residents are applying to gate that, return it to private road, and to install gates. And so the planner contacted me. We talked about it. I indicated that it's within their county. We don't have any say about it, but that they would need to contact Riverside County from more the regional standpoint. And he had indicated that they're in the process of doing that now. So I know other people, Steve and Debbie, have looked at these Zoom meetings. I don't know if either one of you has any comment. It appears that this is going to be decided fairly soon. And I guess just from what the planner told me, he thinks it's possible that they are going to receive their application to approve these gates or to install these gates. So anyway, that's what I know at this point, that an approval is going to be coming up fairly soon.
Yeah.
Approval or denial, well, whichever way.
Right.
Debbie or Steve, do you have anything beyond what I
Well,
say?
I did participate in the 2 Zoom meetings that were in December. I did not, wasn't in a position to listen in on the one last week. But back in December, those 2 dates, definitely the Fallbrook Planning Committee appeared to me that they were leaning pretty hard on approving the permit for the 1 gate for that group of residents there in the 2.2 stretch of road. And And I know with the December 21st meeting, there was a lot of communication on the part of Fallbrook individual residents that also live outside of that 2.2 stretch of road there. So as a result, since there was so many questions and there was a lot of clarity that needed to take place, they did schedule that meeting for last week, which was the 7th. I don't know if you listened in, Steve, or not.
I did.
Okay.
I did, yes.
And so when we get to that point, then you comment on that. So unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't do it, but I really felt prior to last week that they were leaning heavily towards approving it until some legitimate questions for clarity did come up. I did get, as a result of last week's meeting, copies of emails that were sent to the planning committee in terms of the pros and cons from the residents out of Fallbrook, and only a few from people that live in the Duluth community. So it was a mixed bag. On the Fallbrook side, the people that are not on that stretch of road obviously had a lot of questions, you know, like accessibility for the gate and so forth, because they would take that roadway there. So a lot of that against it, and obviously a few people in that community are not for it for a variety of different reasons. So they have their own internal disagreements there as well. But a lot of time and effort and money has gone into getting to the point where they're at today. So what I understood from December the 21st, the planning committee gave the gate committee and the road committee 30 to 60 days to come up with answers to questions that primarily the Fallbrook people had had. And so I believe that they're working on that. The only two things I saw from Duluth was one from one homeowner association, which said that they were in support of the gate, you know, as a result of our experiences that we've had with the traffic and so forth. And then one other individual, a private resident up here as well, was in favor of it. And they commented on some flyers that were distributed out here in the Duluth side saying that 5,400 cars were going to go through the Duluth road. And so they commented on that and said that that was ridiculous and so forth. So anyhow, not going to the meeting or participating last week, I'm not sure what my interpretation would be. So Steve, maybe you can give us some info.
Pretty much everything you said is the same as what they talked about at the next meeting. It was the county meeting on the 7th, and they went through the whole process of letting everybody speak for the full 2 hours that they had allotted. It wasn't very many comments against. It was a lot of the people in the Fallbrook area were kind of like, you know, I'm not totally against this thing. I just want to make sure that I can get to the hospital if I want to get to the hospital, and I'm not going to be accessed and coded out. Or if we have a fire here, we want to be able to evacuate. And so they tried to answer those verbally as much as they could, just tell people that, you know, that was all being worked on, and there was no intention to, you know, kind of tell the neighbors who are immediately adjacent, whether it be us to the north or these people on Rock Mountain to the south, that you're not going to get through the gate come high hell or water. But they did use the term, you know, you just need to give an application or whatever to get the code, kind of a thing. And I think that's what scared everybody. It's like, well, now who's going to review the applications and who gets to decide this or that, you know? But I know it seemed like the whole gist of it is they're going to be very flexible, because they don't care if the residents go back and forth. They just want to get the 1,500 Marines a day that are trucking through, you know, the people shortcutting off of the freeway, they're shortcutting. So the local people are not the problem. It's that other 1,500 that they want to get off on a daily basis. So I think they'll be very flexible, because they really want the gates. And if they have to give up, you know, a few extra codes to local residents, that's not a problem for them at all, I don't think, you know. Yeah, so,
Yeah.
It is going back on January 18th to the planning group you talked about. And then the ultimate decision is made by the director of Riverside County, and that will be on his first meeting in February or something like that, or right around the 1st of February. So that's kind of the timeline they're working on. I suspect that group that's lobbying for it will want to get it done in the first 30 days and get all the questions resolved in the first 30 days if they can, you know.
Mhm.
They're anxious. So, and that's what I heard. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so pretty much just getting the gate committee there to answer these questions, even though at that last meeting, the fire captain was there, you know, trying to reassure people that, you know, they have a system in place, you know, not just one, but two, but three, for example, and emergency crews and so forth would not be an issue. So anyhow, so that's the only information that I have for right now. I haven't heard any more.
And one more thing was I talked to Riverside County and asked, are you guys going to speak up and put in a yay or a nay or anything like that? He says, it doesn't bother us at all. We're not involved. We're just listening, kind of a thing like that. So they're not apparently going to be putting in any position one way or the other and just let it fall where it falls, you know.
Right. And that's pretty much what Jeffries had said back in February of last year when we had that community meeting over at the closest home. He pretty much said the same thing at that time. So I think that's it, Jim, on that subject.
Oh, that concludes all the items we have on the agenda for tonight.
Okay.
So is it the committee desire to adjourn, or are there any other items?
Nothing here. How about you, Ray?
Nothing here.
Okay, then it's time to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
You have a great evening.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Jessica.
Mhm.